Sure, I didn't even try.
Huge production.
Yeah, Alan and I both have just stopped trying.
Huge production.
Take our name off the list now.
Yeah, no, I get you.
Unfortunately.
Well, on that note, when we discussed this evening, we talked about what could be an interesting way in, and we thought about the idea, and then you suggested that there was an episode that, unlike most of the episodes, came in with some problems. And if you could talk for a little bit about, well, when you read the episodes, what was it? What were the elements that caused you to think we've got to do some work here? What did you find?
I will speak to that. First of all, thank you all for coming. It's great to be here and exciting to see all these faces. It's kind of like Comic-Con, exciting, except I'm not Eric and you're not screaming. When I met Paul, he asked me to do a Cinematheque. He said, can you somehow show the evolution of an episode? And interestingly enough, on our show, we have an amazing writing staff, and I came in on season 2. I did not do season 1. So, but up to episode 10, and actually ever since then, really, for the most part, every episode kind of comes in and is, what's called the EP draft. Which, how many of you have read the drafts? Is there a batch of you that have read that?
Oh,
okay,
this is great, wonderful.
So the EP draft is what we call, it's the executive producer draft. It's what we're happy enough with from the writers to send to HBO. It's the first thing they ever see. So we got that draft. We kind of did it. It was like, let's just send this because we're going to need to do a lot of work on it. But most of them that come in are really in good shape, and what you see on the air is not far from the EP draft. Episode 10 came around, and that wasn't the case. It was, when you're in the arc of a series, we do 12 episodes. In our case, and every show I've ever been on is different. In the case of True Blood, usually the writers have the first 6, 7 episodes figured out before we ever start shooting. They have an idea what's going to happen at the end. Doesn't always happen the way we think it is, but by the time we're shooting, by the time we get to episode 8 and 9, the scripts are coming in pretty close to when we start prepping. So, right now I've already read 2 scripts for season 4. I won't say a thing about them, but we're still 5 weeks out from shooting. I read the first one a month ago. So, but by the time I get to episode 7 this season, my guess is I'll start prepping it about a day later. So in this case, we get the script in, and it's well, in the arc of things, what I was saying is by the time you get to episode 10, like 10 is turning the corner towards the finale. And episode 10 is really an important episode every season because like you've been building, as you might notice from watching the seasons, it's like we barrel ass down the road, and then all of a sudden it's like we head towards the finale at episode 10. So we better know what the finale is going to be. Well, I get the copy of the script, and I always look at it like I'm the first one of you. I may be working on the show, but I'm the first audience member. The writers have been working on it as a group. There's 5 of them plus Alan working in a room. They spit it out. They hand it to me. I'm the first person who gets to read what we're going to do and what you're going to see. And a lot of this one just didn't make sense to me. And I thought everything else we were doing was great, and it made sense, and it was crazy with this Maynard running around and people running around naked all over the place. But it made some sort of sense. There was a sensibility to it. And in this particular case, there were a couple of things that just weren't really working. And I went to Alan and I said, I've come to you on episodes. I've had a note here, a note there, things to do, and all that kind of stuff. But this one, I'm lost. Can we talk?
And what did you did Alan himself work with the writers on the piece, or did you work with them?
Well, this was a really interesting episode because we gave our writer's assistant and our script coordinator, who were budding writers, Alan gave them an opportunity to write the script. So the 2 ladies you see on the script, they're now on No Ordinary Family. They've moved on and gotten official staff jobs. But this was kind of a gift from Alan to give them a shot. So they're actually really good writers, but they weren't as experienced as our other writers. So I think part of the problem was that our other writers probably would have figured out all the problems ahead of time. In this case, green writers, first script they've ever written, and this is what we have. So,
well, can you pick out like any particular story areas or character areas that you said, we've really got to work on this?
Yeah, I mean, if you've read the script, the biggest issue really had to do with what the hell is Mary Ann? What really is her end game? Like, where is this really going to go? And how are we going to get there from this script? Because we only have 2 episodes to go and really only 1 before we actually are doing the finale. That was a big part of it, and tied into that was the character of Sam, and really a big part of it, if you again read the EP draft, is, you know, he was basically lights Merlotte's interior on fire. Well, if, you know, you've got a set that's built on a wooden floor in a wooden studio that's 100 years old, that wasn't designed to burn, kind of impossible to do without it looking like crap. And one of the big things we have to do with all this big stuff that we do is, you know, part of my job is like, hey, this is really great, but it's going to look like, it's not going to be up to the standard that we hold. And so that production-wise was an issue, but also I couldn't figure out what Sam was doing and why he was doing it. I was like, he's going to burn this place down. He's going to burn his own place down, but I mean, I literally sat down with Al, like probably in 14 pages of notes, which I couldn't believe. I said, I'm sorry, but this is what I have. You want to hear him? He said, he closed his door. We sat in a room for 2 days. I mean, we went home at night, but we spent 2 days literally like talking through, and he rewrote the whole thing. You know, not the whole thing, but he rewrites every script to a small degree, or
he does,
or a large degree. You know,
yeah.
He puts his little stamp on it.
Mm-hmm.
This was a big stamp, and we sat down with it. But I said to him, I mean, he lights it on fire so that he can the other guys can get away, and I'm like, but you know, what's he gonna do? Like, is he thinking he's gonna kill all of the people in the Merlottes? Like, these are all his friends. Like, he doesn't want to kill anybody. That's not, I mean, it's a little bit in his nature, as you've seen what's gone on, but it's like what he was trying to get away from. And it was just, it didn't make sense. I said, and then if he lights it on fire, all they have to do is go outside. Like, what's he gonna do? He's gonna burn his place down, and they're gonna be outside waiting for him. And he was like, yeah, you're right. And thus was born the whole idea of going out, and then we were talking about the idea of, like, you know, I keep going to him about character. I'm like, well, what's he really afraid of? Like, what's this all about? And it's like, you know, he's afraid of revealing that he's a shifter. I said, but we have this great opportunity where you could maybe get away from these guys. All he has to do is shift, right? I mean, if he really wants to get away, why doesn't he turn into a fly? And that's when Alan was like, the whole thing with Smite Me that you'll see and all that, that came out of just this conversation of like, what would actually be really cool, driven by who the characters really are. And then throughout all that stuff, that was a lot of the big sweeping change, and throughout a lot of that was really, you know, I was asking him about Marianne and what the end game is, and when he said to me something along the lines of, well, she's really like, she's waiting for her God to come, and this is her whole plan, she's going to do this thing for her God to come, but she's wrong. God's never going to come, you know, and it was like this sort of revelation of, you know, that we've got this crazy person who has all this influence, and even though she may be a quote-unquote Maenad who can make people's eyes turn black and everything, she still is kind of, like all the characters in the show, kind of the earth, kind of like, you know, the show is about, you know, racism, discrimination, tolerance, you know, black, white, gay, etc., etc., so, you know, Maenad, human, vampire, whatever, she's wrong. There's no God coming. So I said to him, you know what that reminds me of is, it's like, she's kind of like an Arab terrorist who thinks if he does what Osama bin Laden says, he's going to get the 72 virgins in heaven, you know, if he does it. So, you know, some people may believe that's true, and that may be their religion, but, you know, a lot of people would say, it's probably not going to happen, but an Arab terrorist who believes that and is willing to, you know, do jihad and kill people, kind of needs to be stopped. If he's going to kill people for any reason, needs to be stopped. So Marianne needed to be stopped. And thus, you know, towards the end, we had Sam, you know, revealing himself and then having to trust, and there were a lot of trust issues, and basically he's admitted he's a shifter to his friends, who were kind of surprised by it and blown away by it, and then, you know, gives himself over to Bill to basically entrust that Bill will save him so that he can save the town, which is really what he wanted to do. He didn't mean to burn down the place and kill anybody. Right. So we had to break all that down and redo it, and, you know, we did it, and it was, you know, we had a successful season.
Right, so you had to find a physical way to make that happen that, A, worked for the fact that you couldn't burn down the actual set, right, and that also made sense for you.
Right, exactly.
And that when he sort of disappears, that's the shifting, right? When he kind of disappears.
Yeah, well, there's a you know, he doesn't really disappear, he shifts into a fly.
Yeah.
You see somebody
right.
going like this, and they don't know
right,
that's
right,
actually
right,
Sam,
right,
nor does
right,
anybody.
right. And that wasn't in the first one. he didn't do it in the first
Oh,
one.
no, there was no shit, none of the
Right.
Smite
So
stuff.
you didn't take advantage of what he actually was or did.
No, and that's a big, you know, a lot of what has to happen on the show, especially the more the seasons go on, the more we start catching ourselves with all these different things that we've created, vampires and shifters and rules and things that sometimes trip us up, sometimes, every now and then we just miss it. Somebody will point something out, we're like, oh no.
Okay.
But usually we're like, you know, we're all trying to like make sure that we're, you know,
Good.
figuring it out.
Now, was there more you wanted to talk about that, Greg?
No, I think those were the two big things. I mean, there's
Yeah.
lots of little things along
Right.
the way and different character stuff, but, you know, maybe we'll save that for some Q&A.
Yeah, well, before we go ahead and screen the episode, did anybody have any questions particularly about the differences between the two scripts before we move on? Yes?
Is that also why you added the moment where Suki uses some strange power to make Marion back off? Because I noticed that wasn't in the first script either, and then the second one sort of emphasized that we don't know what her powers are.
Yeah, that was a fairly noticeable thing, the way she was almost like she had an electrical shock or something and knocked her backward, whereas she seemed a little helpless in the first one.
Yeah, that was one of the other things that, it wasn't why per se, but that was something that Alan had been wanting to reveal. And there was some stuff in there that I remember pointing out about the way Bill comes in, and you know, it was a while ago, and there's, you know, I've read the two scripts and two in between since, so I don't remember all the details, but it was part of, like, because everything else was getting amped up. I mean, you know, Suki always has to be kind of at the top level of all the story, so she needed something strong in the midst of everything else that was going on. It was, you know, then we were going to use it. You know, it was also part of understanding now how we were going to do the end. You know, I actually apologized to Alan after the 2 days. I was like, I didn't mean to come with 14 notes. I'm sorry, I know it's crazy, but I just had to. He's like, this really helped me figure out the end of the season. You know, we really got this figured out. It was part of like what she was going to do at the end, so we had to reveal it there.
We got maybe one more if somebody has one, or we'll go ahead and screen it. Okay, so we'll screen it and then we'll do some questions.